Oh, I didn't see you there. I was just reading about the American Civil War. It all started with the South seceding from the Union because they felt that they were losing power in the national government due to the addition of free states to the Union. Their final straw of their decision to secede was the election of 1860, in which Abraham Lincoln was elected President of the United States. He had no public plans for abolition, but the South saw it on the horizon.
Jefferson Davis was selected as the leader of the Confederate States. He was seen as a champion of the slave society and embodied the values of the planter class. Rare footage of Jefferson Davis's inaugural speech was recently discovered.
Sanctified by justice and sustained by a virtuous people, let me reverently invoke the God of our fathers to guide and protect us in our efforts to perpetuate the principles by which His blessing they were able to vindicate, establish and transmit to posterity, and for the continuance of His favor, ever be grateful and acknowledged. Let us look hopefully towards success, to peace, and to prosperity.
Less than a month later, Abraham Lincoln gave his inaugural speech after winning the presidential election of 1860. He was the first Republican to become president. Along with Davis's speech, historians have just found footage of Lincoln's inaugural address.
I am loath to close. We are not enemies, but friends. We must not be enemies. Though passion may have strained, it must not break our bonds of affection. The mystic cords of memory, stretching from every battlefield and patriot, graved to every living heart and hearthstone all over this broad land, will yet swell with the chorus of the Union when again touched, as surely they will be by the better angels of our nature.
The North and the South finally came to armed conflict in Charleston, South Carolina at the Battle of Fort Sumter. After the U.S. Army troops inside the fort refused to vacate it, Confederate forces opened fire on the fort with cannons.
Abandon the fort or we will fire.
The next day, the fort was surrendered to the South without casualty, but some were wounded. After the Confederate successful military campaign led by Pierre Beauregard at Fort Sumter, more states began joining the Southern cause, as Virginia seceded, shortly followed by Arkansas, Tennessee, and North Carolina. Within days of Virginia leaving the Union, President Lincoln issued a blockading at southern ports using the far superior Union Navy, limiting the South's ability to stay supplied. With the press demanding action, the Union Army prepared to attack Bull Run, hoping that it would lead to capture of Richmond 100 miles south. The Union were led by General Irvin McDowell, and the Confederates were led by Thomas Jackson, a war hero from the Mexican-American War. The overly confident Yankee soldiers left Washington for Bull Run on July 21, 1861, and the battle began. Many civilians and congressmen gathered to watch the battle take place. The high number of casualties led to many impactful poems. Audio was recently recovered from one of George Henry Boker's famous works.
Blood, blood, the lines of every printed sheet Through their dark arteries reek with running gore, at hearth, at board, before the household door. 'Tis the sole subject with which neighbors meet, girls at the feast and children in the street. Prattle of horrors flash their little store of simple jests against the cannon's roar. As if mere slaughter kept existence sweet, O heaven, I quail at the familiar way. This fool, the world, disports his jingle cap, murdering or dying with one grin a gap. Our very love comes draggled from the fray, smiling at victory, scowling at mishap, with gory death companion and at play.
After losing the first 2 battles of the war, the North turned to a new commander of the Union Army, George B. McClellan, a West Point grad, dubbed as the Young Napoleon.
Yeah.
The supreme command of the army will entail vast labor upon you.
I can do it all.
Unfortunately, McClellan could not do it all, as he proved to be an indecisive general. The Confederates still had some hope of British intervention on their behalf, and conflict between the Union and Great Britain arose late in 1861 when a Union warship stopped a Confederate ship with 2 diplomats headed for Britain on board. The outraged British sent troops to Canada to prepare for war. Luckily for the Union, Abe Lincoln released the prisoners, and the tensions between the powerful British and the North cooled.
Wow, 1861 was an action-packed year. On to the next chapter, 1862.